In the quiet of an early morning, I, Evan Johnson, thought I was savoring a moment of peace with my coffee, oblivious to the storm brewing. Married for 25 years, our home echoed with the laughter of our children, now departed, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Yet nothing could have prepared me for the shocking discovery that shattered the calm. My wife, Audrey, entangled in a torrid affair with a man she called Stallion. As their passionate cries and the creaking of bed springs invaded my sanctuary, I stumbled upon a scene that turned my world upside down. Armed with evidence and a Smith & Wesson, I navigated through the betrayal, plotting a revenge that unfolded in the most unexpected ways. I should be at work, but instead, I find myself inexplicably calm, sitting at the kitchen table, savoring a freshly brewed cup of coffee. This moment of tranquility is exactly what I needed to find my inner peace. It's a practice I used to indulge in regularly when our children were young. I would wake up an hour earlier than the rest of the household, relishing in the serenity of those quiet moments. It became somewhat of a passion for me. By the way, my name is Evan Johnson, and I have been happily married for 25 years. Well, at least I was happy a few hours ago. We have 4 children, and the youngest one left home just last year. My wife has been struggling with the empty nest syndrome, as she calls it. To help her cope, I suggested she take up a hobby. I believe she started doing just that about an hour ago. I had no idea his name was Stallion, though. That's what she kept calling him. "Do it, stud! Give it to me!" she exclaimed. It's peculiar that the aroma of our favorite coffee hasn't lured her away from her newfound hobby. Normally, when I make coffee, Audrey, my wife, would rush downstairs even before it was ready. But she has been preoccupied lately, so perhaps that's why she hasn't noticed the enticing scent yet. "Tell me how much better I am than your spineless, weakling husband," she passionately expressed. "Oh my God, you're so much better." As I sit here, I notice my trusty old Model 59 Smith & Wesson resting on the red oak kitchen counter, loaded and ready. I contemplate whether to engage the safety mechanism, ultimately deciding it's better to be cautious. Just in case. After all, her boyfriend is a police officer. How do I know this? Well, when I arrived home earlier than expected, I found his uniform and cummerbund scattered across the living room floor, alongside my wife's clothes, including her black lace, crotchless Victoria's Secret panties. She had purchased them 2 months ago and even showed them to me. I was instantly aroused and encouraged her to try them on, but she refused, stating they were reserved for special occasions. I thought our 25th wedding anniversary would be the perfect time, but she never wore them. I wonder what could be more special than that. Perhaps my birthday? No, that was 2 days ago. Now the incessant creaking of the bed springs and the continuous thud of the headboard against the wall invaded my thoughts, making it difficult for me to concentrate on my tasks. Uncertain of how much time I had, I listened to the noises emanating from what used to be my bedroom, a place I vowed never to enter again. It was evident that this was not their first encounter, as I could hear, among other things, my loving wife's words. "Damn it, baby. We need to find a way to increase our time together to 2 or 3 times a week instead of once in a while." How did I find myself in the midst of this nightmare? It was a foolish mistake. I had gone to work and left my briefcase behind. Well, to be precise, I had left it in the garage when I placed it there to rescue the cat from under the hood of my car, only to forget about the briefcase entirely. Tabby was our second cat, and many years ago, on a cold winter morning, I neglected to tap on the hood before starting the car, resulting in the tragic end of Clarence, our first cat. The memory of the sound a cat makes when entangled in a fan belt spinning at a rapid 1,000 revolutions per minute, along with the sight of fur flying everywhere, still haunts me. Neither Clarence nor I possessed the necessary intelligence. The briefcase wasn't particularly significant, so I had intended to leave it behind. However, I had an appointment with a client who drove me straight to my house. As I turned onto my street, my heart sank at the sight of a black and white police car parked in front of the entrance. It felt as though a knife had pierced my heart, indicating that something dreadful had befallen my devoted wife. Without even bothering to close the car door, I hastily made my way into the house, narrowly avoiding colliding with my wife's new silver Lexus LS sedan in the driveway. Unfortunately, her plaster garden gnome did not share the same fortune. And so, here I am now, sitting and sipping my coffee, reflecting on the series of events that led me to this moment. It was an incredibly unpleasant experience, one that I had never encountered before. Instead of coffee, I had a strong desire for whiskey. However, I made the conscious decision to maintain a clear mind. I must admit, their passionate cries were incredibly unsettling, and witnessing the act was even worse. Nevertheless, I had to witness it, if only to capture the necessary video and audio evidence. Surprisingly, the most disturbing aspect was not seeing them engage in sexual activity on my bed. It was the verbal humiliation inflicted upon me by my own wife. The explicit comparisons and demeaning remarks she made were truly unpleasant to endure. It was disheartening to hear her express that her lover was superior to me in every way. If she desired more, she should not have married me in the first place. Discovering that my wife had cheated on me with her lover in our marital bed was a shocking revelation. Yes, they had engaged in intimate acts on my side of the bed. My wife, breathless with excitement, rode him in a manner that pleased her, openly expressing her arousal. Part of me struggled to believe what I was witnessing, even though the evidence was undeniable. My wife, at the age of 50, had chosen a lover who couldn't have been older than 30. He was in exceptional physical shape, unlike myself. While I may not have been the epitome of masculinity, couldn't that despicable person have pursued someone else's wife who was in better shape? I failed to comprehend his choices. The ordeal seemed to last an eternity, but after approximately 90 minutes, silence fell upon the house. They must have taken a break. Suddenly, I heard my wife inquire about coffee, but her boyfriend remained silent. All I heard was Audrey exclaiming, "Oh my God!" followed by a flurry of activity, the sound of closets being opened and closed, dresser drawers being rummaged through, and laundry baskets being moved. I assumed they were erasing any evidence of their rendezvous. Soon enough, I heard them descending the stairs, both of them naked and wrapped in sheets, appearing in the kitchen. At that precise moment, they caught sight of me. The sight of my presence caused Audrey to inhale sharply, her breath catching in her throat. Even her lover mirrored her reaction. I couldn't be certain if his shock stemmed from seeing me or the Smith & Wesson Model 59 in my possession. He quickly glanced towards his uniform, a sense of urgency overtaking him. However, he soon realized it was not there. "Stallion, your service weapon, your boss took it with him when he departed. He was a compassionate man." I watched as he began to fade away right before my eyes. Despair trembled on his lips as he fell to his knees, the sheet slipping from his grasp. Frantically, he rummaged through the scattered pile on the floor, searching for something specific. He took that as well. I believe he referred to it as your throwing weapon, if I'm not mistaken. What troubled him the most was the fact that the serial number had been removed. It seemed like a significant loss for this former officer, perhaps costing him around 5 to 7 years. Stud Johnson's shoulders slouched in response to this revelation. As I mentioned earlier, he was a caring individual. While the two of you were occupied upstairs, he and I engaged in a pleasant conversation. Stud quickly glanced out the window onto the street. Yes, he also took a patrol car. Your boss mentioned that you were responsible for ensuring safety at a construction site. He contemplated taking your uniform as well, but he thought you might need it when you eventually depart from here. But where was I? After Sergeant Marks obtained his video footage of both of you and confiscated your weapons, he noticed my Smith & Wesson and asked me, "Is this your weapon?" I confirmed. "Is it licensed?" he inquired. Again, I affirmed. "Do you know how to operate it?" he questioned. Once more, I replied in the affirmative. "Are you planning to use it on either of them?" he warned, emphasizing the consequences of civilians resorting to violence, even if it may seem justified. As law enforcement officers, we possess the privilege of using force, but civilians do not. I assured him that unless the individual possessed a third weapon unknown to us, no one would be shot. Your boss nodded in approval and made his way towards the exit, remarking, "Oh, do me a favor and inform Officer Johnson not to come to the station. We will contact him when we require—" "Do you happen to have a third gun?" I inquired, to which he shook his head in the negative. My query was more rhetorical, intended to underscore a point rather than to elicit a genuine response. I wasn't genuinely contemplating aiming at any of them. Rather, I gestured in their direction while continuing with my narrative. "Perhaps you could call your wife to provide transportation home," I suggested, though I anticipated a negative response. Predictably, he relayed that his wife was too distressed by a video I had emailed her, depicting him and Audrey in my bedroom. Despite the garbled nature of her communication, she expressed anguish over her father, the chief of police, and the impact on their children. It was evident that they had a seemingly respectable family, which made their current predicament all the more lamentable. Despite the gravity of the situation, I found a sense of amusement in the unfolding events. It felt akin to reeling in a fish and toying with it before letting it go. I toyed with the notion of asking my wife to provide transportation, but her car had been seized by the police due to the discovery of unaccounted-for cannabis in the vehicle. Audrey's initial shock and outcry were replaced by a despondent resignation upon learning of the car's impoundment. As the officer departed upon donning his uniform, my wife found her voice once more, pleading with me and professing her love. I reassured her, recognizing the misunderstanding that had led to my earlier outburst. Her confession regarding her love for me assuaged any lingering doubts. Her demeanor, previously characterized by shock, now shifted to one of nervous attentiveness, hanging on my every word. I deeply apologize, but when I believed that your love for me had faded, I made the decision to share the video with our children. My intention was for them to become acquainted with their future stepfather. However, it seems that they have had a negative reaction to it for some reason. I had anticipated that they would be happy for you. This situation demonstrates the extent of my actions. Oh my, you didn't do that. I simply nodded in response. I neglected to mention one more detail, although you may already be aware of it. Your lover's spouse happens to work in the same company as you. I believe she mentioned that she holds the position of executive assistant to the CEO. Please do not worry. I assured her that she should not terminate your employment, even if they decide to relocate you to Little Rock. During my conversation with the lawyer, she informed me that due to your higher income, you will be required to provide child support for several years. She estimated the amount to be around $3,000 per month. I understand that many betrayed husbands refuse to accept this responsibility as they strive to maintain their macho image. However, I will not be following that path. Instead, I plan to take some time off from work and embark on an extended fishing vacation to cope with my pain. As the saying goes, deep sea señorita, fishing in the Gulf of Mexico. I must admit I am unsure why the lawyer requested your photograph. She mentioned that it was for her father's benefit. Perhaps it was to distribute among the authorities in case they wished to initiate any form of harassment. Alternatively, it could have been to determine if any of them still held an interest in dating you. Nevertheless, I provided her with a photo that clearly showcases your expertise in a certain area. Additionally, I sent a copy of the video to your parents as well as your colleagues. How could you have been so heartless towards me, Evan? Oh dear, I wasn't being cruel. I simply wanted to ensure that everyone was aware of your new partner. At this point, all your friends on Facebook appeared to be pleased for you. Audrey displayed minimal reaction. She simply remained seated on the floor, wrapped in her sheet, sobbing, shaking her head and muttering, "This can't be happening to me." "All right, my dear, it is time for you to get dressed and prepare your belongings. Your parents should be arriving soon to pick you up." I gently guided her towards, "I would be delighted if you could accompany me. However, it is imperative that you find suitable accommodation for the night. I have been informed that they are willing to provide you with temporary lodging. Unfortunately, due to the divorce proceedings, the house will have to be sold. I mentioned this after her divorce was finalized. It appears that you have some inquiries, my dear. I must admit this comes as a surprise to me. What do you believe should occur once I become aware? Frankly, I never anticipated that you would be caught. Shall we continue this fruitless conversation?" There was a brief silence upstairs for a few minutes. She remained silent, save for the occasional wheeze and sob. "Why is it that cheaters always cry when they are caught? This is an utterly dreadful situation. If being caught is so unpleasant, then for heaven's sake refrain from cheating." Approximately 10 minutes later, she descended the stairs, dressed but without a suitcase. "Evan, my dear, we really must." At that very moment, I heard her parents' car pull up to our house. "Farewell, Audrey. You are always a gentleman." I held the door open for her. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so that your significant other doesn't betray your trust, and feel free to listen to the next story as it surpasses the current one.